I have apparently 982 videos
Awesome!
published. Now, a lot of those, some of those, a few of those are live streams, which means it's not like I've listened to 982 products, but I've probably listened to, conservatively, I don't know, 400 products. I've put my ears on a lot of electronics and speakers, and I rarely do I get surprised. Well, I'm here to tell you, this piece of equipment surprised me. And we're going to talk about it. Steady now. My hair looks weird. I took a shower and I used conditioner. Now it's all fuzzy. I don't care for it. We are talking about the Unison Research Unico, which is almost unicorn.
Unicorn.
And this integrated amplifier is a unicorn. We're talking about the Unico Primo. It is the most affordable integrated amp in Unison Research's lineup. It's got a tube in it. Also, Class A. It also puts out 80 watts into 8 ohms. I don't know how much it puts out into 4 ohms. I'm trying to find that out, but I had it hooked up to 4 ohm speakers, and it did an incredible job. The Primo integrated. This is the best integrated amp I've ever heard. Now, it still may not be for everyone because it has some very specific sonic characteristics that I don't think are going to go together with every single speaker out there. However, the ones that I put on it did just fine. This is a tube buffer on the front end and is Class A on the back end. And it's got some junk in the trunk. We'll get to that later. Puts out a staggering 80 watts of Class A power into an 8 ohm load. And an even more staggering 180 watts into a 4 ohm load. The tube that it uses is a 12AX7 or an ECC 8.3. I think it comes with a tongue saw tube installed. If you want to read more about the specifications, you can, but in my experience, the specifications do not tell the story of an amplifier at all. Your ears do. I know, that's shocking that people should actually listen to amplifiers before coming up with a conclusion or an opinion or dismissing an amplifier. I call that contempt prior to investigation. The only problem is people can't put their ears on all products at all times. I am going to give a bit of a spoiler alert. Right now, there is a used version of this from a very reputable dealer that has a very liberal return policy for $1,100. And if somebody doesn't buy that, that is insane because that is almost 50% off of the $1,999 retail. This amplifier comes in at 14 kilograms. And when I did a quick conversion on the phone, that's 30.86 pounds. And it's a fairly compact component. Did I mention this was handmade in Italy with Italian transformers? Basically with Italian everything, unless the capacitors came from wherever, right? So this thing was sourced, the transformers sourced, the wood for this wonderful looking remote control is Italian wood. Check out this remote control. And it sits vertically. Hold on, let me see if I can do it. Look at that. Sits vertically. Unison Research also makes a CD player that you can use this to control as well. When's the last time you've ever seen a remote like this? I would argue, not very often. On the front, you have this really cool wooden logo, and the finish on the front of this is a bit rough. It's almost like some type of coating. There's two knobs. You have one large volume knob and the remote control. It's a motorized pot inside. So as you turn up the remote control, you will see the volume knob turn up or turn down. Next to that is a selector switch, and the actuation of said switch is about as satisfying a switch as I have ever turned. I will put it to you this way, and we'll get into more of this later when I talk about the sound impressions. But when I started listening to this in earnest in the living room, my stepson was down in the kitchen doing some stuff. And I said, you got to come over here. You got to check this out. He's kind of a gearhead. He's into cars, a little bit into hi-fi. I'm like, change the input. So he changes the input, and this is what he goes, oh, that's nice. And I said, yes, it is nice. On the back, there are two sets of binding posts to run two pairs of speakers. Subwoofer out, however, that is a left and a right subwoofer out, so that it is not a subbed subwoofer out. Tape out next to that, tape in next to that, an AV, a tuner, a CD, and then a phono. Now, the phono stage is an additional adder, so it does not come with the phono stage installed, and the one that I have does not have a phono stage installed. It's a $200 adder.
How it sounds. And I made my wife listen.
Well, I will put it to you this way. There has been maybe 3 different occasions in the last 3.5 years where I have pulled my wife in and demanded that she listen to something. She loves Bruce Springsteen. I like some Bruce Springsteen songs, and I'm on Fire came on. So there's a couple of things that I noticed straight out of the gate. One, out of the right speaker, the continuing guitar was as plucky and as airy as I've ever heard. But then his vocals came in, and his vocals were above the speakers and 3-dimensional. It literally sounded like we were in a small theater. Like, I don't know, maybe one of those 1,500 seat theaters where everything just kind of comes at you and engulfs you. My wife was in the bedroom, almost half asleep, getting ready to take a nap. And I didn't do this lightly. I told her, you've got to come sit down and listen to this. And I wasn't trying to coach her up. I'm just like, what do you hear? And she just sat there, she closed her eyes, and she said, I hear everything. What she said before. But then when the vocals came in, she said, he just seems like he's everywhere. Which Bruce was. Now, if you want pinpoint imaging and a flat soundstage, I'm going to tell you right now, this amp is not the amp for you. Because this amp does more tricks than David Copperfield in front of my fireplace with some doves or chained to something. Anyway, it's magical. That's what I'm trying to say. And this amp did something that most amps don't do. And that is surprise me. I've listened to a lot of stuff at this point. This amp just continued to surprise me to the point where I listened for almost 5 hours straight yesterday, letting Tidal do all of the driving. I wasn't even using my own test tracks because I was just shocked and amazed at what it was going to do next. I've listened to this amp a lot in the office, but I never put it out into the living room to really stretch its legs. And I wasn't listening loud, probably about 75 dB. And I did not have a subwoofer hooked up to it. And I had the Emotiva XB2s, which is a $500 speaker. While this amp comes in at $19.99, it's actually a crazy value. And I will tell you why later. For what love is. I want to know what love is. I want you to know This is why I do YouTube and I don't have a singing career. Anyway, what love is, what can I say? There was layering of vocals that I had never heard before. There was an ethereal largeness to the intro of that song. Literally, right out of the gate, that song starts off with what I'm assuming is keyboard. And then it changes, it goes down a little bit, and then there's a dee 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 dee. And then his voice comes in. So what I can tell you is the initial keyboard or organ, whatever it was just like surrounding me, enveloping me in an embrace of yumminess with honey spoon-fed to me. I'm trying to paint a picture here. I don't know if I'm doing a good job, though. And then the dee-dee-dee-dee was just like everywhere. And then his vocals came in so delicately. This is another thing about this amplifier. It is the most dynamic amplifier I have ever heard. So it fakes you into thinking that, okay, I'm listening at a decent level. And when the song gets exciting, it's like watching a movie and you're listening to the dialogue and you're like, okay, I can hear it. And then all of a sudden, like a car crash happens. Although this is not a car crash. It's like a car crash in reverse because something's going from terrible into something being awesome. That's what this does. And the cool thing was we were listening to a lot of songs that were really poorly recorded. Some Led Zeppelin. I don't think this Foreigner song is particularly well recorded. And the source that I had was the Cambridge Audio CXN100. It's a streamer, and I was using its internal DAC, which is a fine DAC. It's quite frankly a very good DAC. Great streamer. But the takeaway that I got when I was listening to this is I didn't have a really, really, really good DAC on this. So if you put something even like the Gishelli Labs J2, J3, maybe with a Sparkos op amp upgrade, or the Daisy from Gishelli Labs, or a Denafreps from Denafreps Aries, it is going to take this thing to an entirely different level. I also, on purpose, only listened to the $500 Emotiva XB2s because I wanted to see what this integrated amplifier could do to improve modestly priced products. The other head-turning moments and just wow moments with me and my stepson were the bass line. And this is another characteristic of this amp that might not be for everyone. It is absolutely lush on the bottom. This reminds me a lot of my Macintosh 7270 power amp, which I don't have anymore. I sold it to one of my patrons, so I know where it's at still. So I can visit it if I want to. Anyway, effortlessly thick, dynamic, punchy, slappy on the bottom end without being sloppy. Effortless bass control. The whole time I was listening, I kept telling my stepson, these are just two bookshelf speakers too. These are just two bookshelf speakers too. It's like one of those experiences when you're at a room at an audio show and you just know they have a subwoofer stashed away somewhere behind a curtain, like the Wizard of Oz. But there was no subwoofer. Those Emotivas, I think, roll off around 50 hertz or so. It's either the high 40s or the low 50s. And at no time was I wanting a subwoofer. So if you have a speaker that is bumpy on the bottom or thick, maybe a little bit warm, I don't know if this is going to be the amp for you. It may be too much of a good thing, and there are no tone controls on this amplifier. So you get what you get. But what you do get, it's like a magical vacation. Like going to Key West and watching the sun go down as you're eating a piece of key lime pie. But you can have that experience every day with the Unico Primo. In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins. If you haven't listened to that song for a while, you need to. Especially if you have the Unico Primo. Again, I was getting served up a bunch of this ethereal kind of moody music, and I wasn't choosing it. Tidal was just serving it up. It was like Tidal knew what I had connected to it. The guitar, it just hangs out for nearly 20 Seconds was just utterly engulfing and intoxicating in a good way. It was like some type of electronic percussion and electronic hi-hat at the beginning. Obviously, we know that the climax of that song is a big drum fill, and I knew that was going to be great. But what really made this an aha moment was, again, the ethereal, three-dimension, almost orb-like presentation. I mean, this is what Dolby Atmos music should sound like. And it was happening with two speakers, which don't even have great vertical dispersion. They have great horizontal dispersion. So the tricks that it was doing in my living room, non-DSP related, are absolutely stunning. And it is so cool that an analog only device, we have no processors in here, no chips, is pulling off a presentation better, more confidently, and more engaging than any type of home theater receiver or DAC with some type of DSP trickery is doing. It's all old school. It's a tube and a Class A amplifier. Telling you, you've got to hear it to believe it. The drum solo when it came in was almost jarring at its intensity. The percussive impact could be felt in my chest at 75 dB on a pair of bookshelf speakers in a living room that has 18-foot ceilings. Paul Simon, Diamonds on the Soles of My Shoes or Feet or something. This was not my choice. This is my stepson's choice. He wanted to hear this. Again, what am I going to say differently? Like his voice was separated out forward, elevated above the speakers. First of all, I don't listen to that song a lot, but it was good enough that I was like, okay, here we go. Another thing about this amplifier. So it had me listening to music that I normally wouldn't listen to. And that's a great litmus test for a piece of equipment when I just let it play and I'm not trying to feed it my test tracks playlist. I'm just listening. And it's making me enjoy music that I don't normally enjoy or I wouldn't normally pick. I've heard that song a few times. It's one of my stepson's favorite songs. And it was magical. Like a unicorn.
Unicorn.
Lastly, I listened about the entire album of Hello Nasty, which has become one of my favorite albums to listen to. This track was just a test and very well recorded album. If you haven't heard it, it's somewhat progressive. I think this album needs to be played at more audio shows because there is a lot of stuff going on spatially, dynamically, ton of details. That's right. Beastie Boys are audiophile. Just like Tool. Bass, space, placement. It's just all sorts of trickery. It's awesome. I'm done talking about music. Let's compare it to my favorite Advanced Paris A10 Classic. A10 Classic comes in around $2,500, has an integrated DAC, has subwoofer outs, HDMI in, has everything that you could possibly need from an integrated amplifier. The Unico analog only, not nearly as pretty. Sonically though, the Unico is better in my opinion, and I'm not saying better like this is better. This is better for everybody because the Unico Primo is not going to be better for everyone. If they don't want that super impactful bass, this is not going to be the amp for you. If you want pinpoint accuracy in a flatter soundstage, this is not going to be the amplifier for you. If you want an engaging experience though, one that will pull you into the music and not let you go, you'll become a hostage and someone will have to try to negotiate your release. If you want that experience with your music, then the Unico Primo is the amp for you. And there is one on the music room right now used for $1,100. And if somebody doesn't buy that, I'm going to buy it. At the retail price of $1,999, it does come off as being a little bit expensive. However, When you consider that you will not need to buy a subwoofer, you're saving $500 to $1,000. So now this $1,999 integrated amplifier becomes a bit of a value. I got the unique opportunity to actually visit the factory for Unison Research in Italy, and it was amazing. The family that runs this company is amazing. They also make speakers, Opera speakers. Just had to connect them. So I connected the Opera Prima to the Unison Research Primo. And that was a match made in heaven. The thing about the Prima is they hit hard on the bass. So you really want to talk about something that doesn't need a subwoofer? It's the Prima and the Primo. All in, that is a $4,500 system. You are going to need a source though. What is flabbergasting to me is just how immersive this experience was without having a super immersive DAC. I said it before, the CXN100 is a very good streamer with a very good DAC. But if you put something even more magical, even more immersive, even more delicate, you are going to be getting an experience that I cannot possibly comprehend anything that would sound better that I've heard. And I've heard a lot of high-end stuff at shows, obviously. And this was another this is not leaving my house product. So I have two integrateds right now that I love. Actually, three. So I have the Cambridge Audio Evo, which is $3,200, has HDMI, has a streamer in it, so it's a very high-tech integrated amplifier. I have the A10 Classic from Advanced Paris, $2,500, and that is somewhat of a higher tech product. Sonically, the Unico is my favorite. From an aesthetic standpoint, the A10 Classic and the Evo 150 are my favorite. There's just a lot more going on visually. But if you take something like the CXN 100 or the Weem Ultra Streamer, there is a little bit more going on visually with album art. What they've done is they've packed an audio experience that I've never experienced before in a $2,000 product. And I was thinking about this yesterday. The transformer in this product is potted, right? Transformers from Italy. Everything's from Italy that can be from Italy, except for the capacitors, whatever they're buying, right? Italian, but it's made in Italy. It's assembled in Italy. And it has as many Italian parts as they can possibly use from Italy. So it occurred to me that for $2,000, a product that is traditionally distributed, I don't know of a lot of US made or even Chinese made amplifiers that could compete with this at the price. So $2,000 is a lot of money, but it's an extremely fair price, and I would say a value price, because I haven't heard anything quite like this. There is nothing that I can compare this to outside of a vintage Macintosh 7270. Which comes in at about the same price. And you have to add a preamp to it. I think it's better than the Mac Stack that I have because it has more air, it has more space, three-dimensionality. This year, the Unico Primo is the product that has surprised me the most. 10 out of 10. Flawless. It may not be flawless for you, depending upon your speakers and depending upon what type of presentation that you want. But if you are into tubes, but you want it to sound good, then the Unico Primo is probably the way to go. Because the Unico and the A10 Classic from Advanced Paris are the two products that actually have tubes in them that I like. Class A amplification, just outstanding. If you liked this video, you should check out my video on the A10 Classic. If you want to buy kind of a forever integrated amp, and the Unico's not for you, the Advanced Paris may be for you. I will link that video here or here. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe.